Now, we've got to talk about Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg, who just totally blew the whistle and exposed Joe Biden. In a letter to the House Judiciary Committee, Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg just completely admitted, just told us all, plain to the world, that during the COVID-19 pandemic, the Biden administration extensively pressured them to censor American speech that would otherwise be protected by the First Amendment. But because they're getting a private company to censor it, it's different in a way. Here's coverage of this letter from Fox News with some more specifics.
All right, Fox News alert this morning. Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg feeling bad. Feeling bad for caving to the Biden-Harris White House, who he admits pressured him and his company into censoring COVID content. Zuckerberg writing, quote, in 2021, senior officials at the Biden administration, including those from the White House, repeatedly pressured our teams for months to censor certain COVID-19 related content, including humor, satire, and expressed significant frustration when we did not meet their demands. I believe the government pressure was wrong, and I regret that we were not more outspoken about it.
So apparently Biden can't even take a joke. They literally tried to censor satire and parody, get it taken down off Facebook, which is just pathetic and dumb. Look, I have so many problems with this whole story, and unfortunately it's confirmation of what we already knew. We already knew that the Biden administration used the levers of the federal government to pressure social media platforms to take down content they didn't like. We already knew that from the extensive reporting done after Elon Musk took over Twitter, the Twitter files that revealed this pressure campaign being done to Twitter. So we always assumed it was happening at other companies. I mean, Biden even publicly, over and over again, accused Facebook of killing people and demanded they censor more content. So we already knew this was happening, but it is good to get confirmation from Mark Zuckerberg, and it does reveal some more disturbing things. Like, one, just a total misplacement of priorities. I mean, the federal government could have been using this time and these resources during a deadly pandemic to focus on actual medical solutions, to focus on public information and awareness, to focus on reopening schools and the workplace safely. There's so much stuff they could have been doing, and instead they were trying to get your uncle's Babylon Bee memes taken down or whatever, or misinformation, some of which turned out to be true. Not all. There was a lot of crackpot stuff that was shared, a lot of not true things, but some of the things that were originally labeled as conspiracy theories are now considered possibilities and totally legitimate theories. The best example of this is the COVID lab leak theory. The idea that COVID originated from a lab in Wuhan was originally dismissed as a conspiracy theory, and Facebook would take it down if you posted it or shared it. Maybe they were doing that because of federal government pressure. Now, right? We don't know. But that actually has turned out to be a totally legitimate theory that now many people believe is the cause of the pandemic, including federal agencies like the FBI. So that's the big core problem I have with this. The Biden administration's general approach of like lobbying private companies behind the scenes, pressuring them. You remember, the federal government has a lot of regulatory and financial power over big tech companies. So when they make a request, it's not just a pure request. There's a coercive element to it. Anyway, the problem I have with this whole approach is pretty simple. It's that they don't know one objective truth. The government experts are not these infallible geniuses who always know what is the true information and what is the misinformation. I mean, you look at a guy like Dr. Anthony Fauci, and he was either wrong or inconsistent and contradicted himself on all sorts of things during the course of the pandemic, from masks to how the vaccines would work, to things like herd immunity, to the safety of school reopenings, and so much more. So the idea that these government experts ever had one truly perfect vision of the truth that they could be trusted to impose on the public discourse is laughable after our experience with the pandemic. I mean, like I mentioned, the COVID lab leak theory totally discredits that notion, but so does just the general idea that we arrive at truth, not through a top-down government dictate of here's what people should be allowed to say online, but through an open marketplace of ideas where theories can be aired and debunked and fact-checked, and the truth will rise to the top over time. We don't need these government experts lobbying private companies to do what they can't and censor us. That's also a First Amendment red flag. Whether it technically violates the letter of the First Amendment to do these kinds of pressure campaigns is unclear, at least right now to me, because it's being actively litigated in court. It's called jawboning from a legal concept. So groups like FIRE, the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, they've got a lot of great work on this, but it's being litigated. When does it cross the line from being a request to being a coercive act of censorship, basically? So the law's a bit muddy, but we can say certainly. And also, like, we have Mark Zuckerberg telling us this happened, but we don't actually have the details. We don't know what the specifics were, how coercive it was, or was it just purely just suggestions? So the law is a bit muddy. I can't make any definitive conclusions about the constitutionality of all this. But what I can say is that it demonstrates a real disregard and contempt from the Biden administration for the principle of free speech and free expression in a way that, regardless of the law, is really deeply concerning. And unfortunately, they really don't appear to have learned their lesson at all. Because after this story broke, after Mark Zuckerberg sent out this letter and it made all these waves, the Biden administration put out a statement and they said, when confronted with a deadly pandemic, this administration encouraged responsible actions to protect public health and safety. Our position has been clear and consistent. We believe tech companies and other private actors should take into account the effects their actions have on the American people while making independent choices about the information they present. Translation, they regret nothing. They still think the government knows best and should pressure private companies to take down American speech that they don't like. I mean, look, you would really hope that through the pandemic and after making so many mistakes, the White House, the Biden administration would gain a little bit of humility, might realize that they're not these infallible, perfect experts after all. But if the response to Mark Zuckerberg's letter is anything to go by, they have not, in fact, had this realization. You guys let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you think this violates the First Amendment? And do you really think the government should be in this business of private pressure campaigns to take down speech at all? Let me know in the comments, and do remember to hit that like button.